Have you spoken to families of the victims of the plane crash?
I don't want to comment on that.
Do you have a plan to go visit the site or meet with any of the
I
first
have a plan
responders?
to visit, not the site, because what did you tell me? What's the site? The water?
Or to meet with the first responders down there?
I don't have a plan to do that, but I will be meeting with some people that were very badly hurt with their family member, obviously. But I'll be meeting with some of the families, yeah.
President Trump yesterday with that flippant response to reporters saying, what do you want me to do? Go swimming? To go to the site of that tragedy over the Potomac River yesterday, and saying he's going to meet with people who are very badly hurt. Sadly, there are no people who are very badly hurt. They're all presumed dead this morning. Earlier in the day, Trump appeared in the White House briefing room where he suggested diversity programs put in place by the Biden and Obama administrations somehow caused Wednesday night's tragedy.
We must have only the highest standards for those who work in our aviation system. I changed the Obama standards from very mediocre at best to extraordinary. I put safety first. Obama, Biden, and the Democrats put policy first. And they put politics at a level that nobody's ever seen. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? They actually came out with a directive, too white. And we want the people that are competent.
I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't. We want brilliant people doing this.
So again, the president going to the briefing room yesterday as they were still pulling the bodies out of the Potomac, suggesting it was DEI that caused this disaster. The president citing diversity standards imposed by previous administrations. The Washington Post is fact-checking the president's claims this morning. The paper reporting the Obama administration in 2013 instituted a new hiring system for air traffic controllers that introduced a biographical questionnaire to attract minorities underrepresented in the controller corps. But Trump, in his first term, left the policy in place, and the FAA under Trump in 2019 launched a program to hire controllers using the very criteria he decried at his news conference. NBC's Peter Alexander pressed the president on that.
The cited FAA text that you read is real, but the implication that this policy is new or that it stems from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is demonstrably false. It's been on the FAA's
Who said
website.
That, you?
No, it's on the website, the FAA's website. It was there in 2013. It was there for the entirety.
What I read.
It was there for the entirety of your administration too. So my question is, why didn't you change the policy during your first administration?
I did change it. I changed the Obama policy. And we had a very good policy. And then Biden came in and he changed it.
He did not change the policy again. And Jonathan Lemire, the fact that we're even having this conversation, this semantic argument over who put the policy in place as some kind of suggestion that it is what led to a helicopter flying into a passenger jet, killing 67 people without any evidence. Why are we even talking about that to begin with? But you wrote about this for The Atlantic yesterday about the president behaving like he's still running a campaign or that he's a businessman sitting at Mar-a-Lago lobbing conspiracy theories and attacks on opponents. What did you see in that briefing room yesterday, John?
Yeah, I was in the room when the president addressed the press there, the briefing, something he wanted to do, didn't defer to any of his officials. He himself wanted the spotlight, wanted the microphone, wanted the cameras, White House officials told me. Yes, this is yet another moment here. First of all, where fact-checking is really important. And good job by Peter, our colleague Peter Alexander. Good work there by the Washington Post. It is worth reiterating. This is, again, the first policies. The diversity initiatives were put in place by President Obama. Trump, while he was president, left them there. And then it was his own FAA, when he was in charge, that promoted programs about hiring those with disabilities to join that agency. And that yesterday, he, of course, tried to blame them in a wedge issue, speaking, in moments after a crisis, the nation reeling from it, choosing once again division. Also, lying about his record, very reminiscent, I will say, of during the presidential campaign when he gained much traction from then Vice President Harris and the idea of transgender surgery provided for inmates in prisons. Well, we fact-checked it at the time and found that that program also existed under the Trump administration. He, of course, when in his Bureau of Prisons promoted it, he, of course, did not change it while he was in office. But bigger picture, Willie, it's another moment where this president took a time of national tragedy and tried to use to score political points and attack his foes. We've seen it a few times this month. The wildfires in Southern California, he blamed that on Democratic politicians. Before he was sworn in, the terror attack in New Orleans on New Year's Day, he blamed that on the border when it turned out, of course, that it was a U.S. citizen in Texas who carried out the attacks. His instinct is never to bring people together, but even in some stunning fashion, try to blame others and point fingers when, of course, as president, the ultimate responsibility should be lying with him.
And you can almost see him anticipating blame of his administration in some way and projecting that onto everyone else. He also blamed former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg for various issues within the FAA. Buttigieg responded on social media writing, quote, "Despicable. As families grieve, Trump should be leading, not lying. We put safety first, drove down close calls, grew air traffic control, and had 0 commercial airline crash fatalities out of millions of flights on our watch." President Trump now oversees the military and the FAA. One of his first acts was to fire and suspend some of the key personnel who helped to keep our skies safe. Time for the president to show actual leadership and explain what he will do to prevent this from happening again. That's former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Katie Kay, watching the president yesterday in that briefing room where Jonathan saw up close, reminded of people who said, you know what, he won a second term now. He's a 2-term president. He did it. Maybe he'll settle in and be the president a lot of people hoped he could be, and put behind him the grievances and personal attacks and all of the things that he used to get back to the White House on the campaign trail. But in this first week, clearly no evidence that that's going to happen.
Yeah, or even that this would be the kind of calmer, more grown-up version of the first administration. With Susie Wiles in as commander-in-chief, there had been some speculation that, yes, they would move fast. The policies might not be policies that many Democrats would agree with, but things would be efficient and work effectively. I think what we've seen in the last 48 hours is that that is not necessarily the case. We saw all of the funding drawn back for domestic grants in the country that had to be overturned very quickly. Then we saw the crash and the response to the crash. But it looks like Donald Trump is feeling extremely powerful and realizing that even if he says something or goes too far, then he's not going to get much pushback, right? I mean, yes, Pete Buttigieg came out with a tweet saying that this was despicable, but you have not had a complete outcry, uniform, from members of the Democratic Party responding to what President Trump did, effectively blaming black, brown people, women, people with disabilities for that air crash. I mean, let's be honest, that's what diversity is. And that is what the president said, that black, brown people, women and people with disabilities caused this crash. I mean, where is the outcry from a coordinated outcry from Democrats? Now, they've been tied up. They've been tied up in the hearings on the Capitol Hill. It's just this sense that Donald Trump wants to have a fight. The fact that he signed a memorandum even after that press conference doesn't suggest at all that he thinks he went too far in that press conference. Quite the contrary, he wants to push it even further. And he thinks that there'll be, even if nothing happens that's positive, there'll be very little pushback from a Congress that seems to be either cowed on the Democratic side or compliant on the Republican side.
Yeah, not much criticism yesterday from Republicans. There were a group of Democrats held a press conference led by Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who very specifically and clearly criticized the president for using this moment to sow division again.